Welcome everybody. Take a moment to cultivate an attitude of refuge in Bodhicitta. So we're going to continue with the light of wisdom, and today our section is on Bodhicitta. So we're really going to get into this. I think this is so important, and there's a reason that all the lamas are always harping on this. So we'll take some time to really explore why it's so vital, even at the highest levels of practice. So we're on page 115 if you're following along, and we have conventional bodhicitta of aspiration. Explaining the main part of generating bodhicitta. This has 2 points: generating conventional bodhicitta and generating ultimate bodhicitta. Generating conventional bodhicitta. This has 2 parts: generating bodhicitta of aspiration and generating bodhicitta of application. So bodhicitta has 2 kinds, corresponding to as the wish to go and going, right? So you have the I want to attain enlightenment, and then you're actually doing the things that lead to enlightenment. And in every case, it's the 6 paramitas, right? That's the path of the bodhisattva. So we can just have the aspiration that I would like to become enlightened, and that itself creates great merit. It's a wonderful attitude to have. But even better is to have that attitude combined with the beginning of activity and the working with the 6 paramitas. So this has 2 parts: generating bodhicitta of aspiration and generating bodhicitta of application. Generating bodhicitta of aspiration. The Lama Mission Ingpo root text says, using your own experience as a measure, arouse the bodhicitta of aspiration through the 4 immeasurables of love, compassion, joy, and impartiality, in order that your mothers, all beings, may have happiness and be free from suffering. So bodhicitta is this incredible thought. It's the most virtuous thought possible. It's the thought that may every being have all the qualities and be purified of all obscurations, have total Buddhahood, right? Most people never even think, may one person have this kind of happiness. They don't even wish that for themselves. They don't even think that's possible. To even think that for yourself would be an amazing idea. To think, may every being, every sentient being, infinite sentient beings have this kind of happiness, just that thought produces immeasurable merit. It's an incredible thing. It's amazing that we never even think that such a thing might be possible, right? We never even consider that all beings could be perfectly happy and have everything that they could ever want. And it is saying that the foundation is these 4 immeasurables, right? That love is the desire for others to be happy. Compassion is the desire that they be free from suffering. These are these 2 aspects here. Joy is taking joy or rejoicing in the happiness they already have. So may it continue. So when you see somebody happy, instead of saying like, I wish they weren't quite so happy, you think, wow, wonderful, they're happy, and may it continue forever. And then impartiality means that we wish this happiness for sentient beings in an even way. Not just close friends and far enemies, we exclude them and we ignore these people, and we really just want like our near family and friends to have happiness. Not like this. We want to have impartial, and with that impartiality leads to an ultimate, a non-referential love and compassion, which is really what we're moving towards. Using as a measure your own experience of never wanting suffering and desiring immense happiness, all the 6 classes of beings who have been your own fathers and mothers are also the same in desiring those things. So we tend to be very narcissistic and self-centered, and we don't spend much time thinking about the fact that just like I want happiness, just like I don't want suffering, others want this too. And having this thought even a little bit and considering this a little bit can completely change your mind. When you look at the death teachings in POA, one of the instructions you're supposed to give to somebody who's dying is everyone has to go through this, right? There's a relief in knowing that we share these experiences. We don't have to just think about, only we have all of this pain and only we have all this happiness. We want to really, like, anytime we experience happiness or suffering, we can connect to other beings and realize when something's difficult, there are others going through things just as difficult or more difficult. And when we have something good, we think, may they have that goodness also. This being so, you should resolve to take upon yourself to endow them with physical and mental well-being and the cause of happiness, which is the creation of merit, and to free beings from suffering, the cause of suffering, which is the karmic actions and disturbing emotions. So we want to take on the attitude that we want to try and help in any way we can, materially, but especially spiritually, right? Because we can give somebody a little food to eat, a few dollars, whatever, these things, but they just produce very, very short-term benefits. We want to endow them with the Dharma, because the Dharma produces inconceivable benefits that go on forever, right? So this is what we want. It's similar to teaching a man to fish, right? We need to give them the skills to know how to find happiness for themselves, because karmic cause and effect is really the essence of it. So we need to teach karma. Garchen Rinpoche said that anybody who teaches karma is a lama, right? And I thought this is a very profound statement. Anybody in your life who taught you that good actions lead to good results and negative actions lead to negative results is a lama for you. So it could be school teachers, parents, etc. And it's saying also to consider all sentient beings have been your father and mother, and also your child. These are often teachings to monastics, so this isn't often put forward as the main way. But I have noticed that for myself and many Western people who have kids, thinking of all beings as your children really helps. Because when you think about somebody who's really difficult, if you imagine them as like a 3-year-old and realize that they were a 3-year-old at one point, it's a lot easier for me to have more patience and compassion for them, because recognizing that they're just run by patterns. When we see toddlers throwing tantrums and doing, selfish things, then we recognize that they're just not mature enough yet to work with those emotions they're feeling. Well, the same is true of adult sentient beings. They're still not mature enough. Not just because they're an adult doesn't mean they're mature. So having this attitude of seeing them as relatives in this way can really open your heart, and we can connect to them by first taking somebody we have compassion and love for, somebody close to us, whatever, and connect to that feeling, and then we can start to spread it and include others in that feeling. Because right now we limit our ability to feel this towards beings, because we only feel it towards some and not towards others. So we get in touch with the feeling, and then we spread it to the beings that we're not including in this. So we have this conventional and ultimate bodhicitta that it mentioned, and conventional includes the aspirational and the applied. So that's both the having this wish and then beginning to walk the 6 paramitas, which we'll get into more. And then the shift into ultimate is when we begin to mix this love with emptiness, and it becomes non-referential, and then we start to get to the closer to the main point. So in order to do that, in order to help beings, resolve to practice love, recognizing them as your own mothers and wishing to cherish them. To practice compassion, recognizing that they suffer in states of existence, so not being able to bear to forsake them. To practice joy, taking delight in their attainment of happiness of gods and Buddhahood. And to practice impartiality, devoid of attachment to near ones or aversion to distant ones. We really need to do this conceptually, because we spend most of our time thinking about ourselves. If you're anything like me, it's like 99.9% of the time. Even when we're practicing the Dharma for ourselves, right? And this self-centered attitude has caused all the problems that we have, because it's very out of balance, and it just leads to more attachment to this body-mind, which we then defend and try to accumulate pleasures for, and all of that causes all the suffering of samsara. So we have to really intentionally and work to think of others more, until this self-grasping is diminished. And this takes a long time and is not an easy process. We really need to, every time we think I, we should think other, and train ourselves out of this self-obsession. As we go through this process, you have the Hinayana, where you begin to recognize suffering and the causes of suffering and reduce your attachments of these foundational level practices. That removes that first layer of self-grasping. But then to really work deeply into this elimination of self-grasping, we have to get into the Mahayana, which means we have to think about other sentient beings. And I know that many people who receive the high teachings of Dzogchen, Madhyamaka, Mahamudra, they never really go through this deep enough, myself included. We get these teachings pretty early on, and we think, wow, amazing, I can just go into resting in my nature. But if you don't spend the time to really transform your conceptual mind into bodhisattva, then you will forever be held back in your progress in the higher levels. We just can't do it, because we're still fixated. We're still using the highest level teachings for the ego. And this happens again and again. And so I find that I keep having to come back to the way of the bodhisattva and practicing the 6 paramitas, because as long as the path is still about me, then I haven't really taken on the Mahayana. I'm still at the Hinayana level. So this is something we really have to consider and be honest about. These four, the immeasurables, are called to pledge the cause, and they become immeasurable by taking the being's pervading space as your focus. They are called to pledge the effect by means of the four samadhis, thus generate bodhicitta of aspiration by means of the attitude of wanting to establish them all in the state of Buddhahood. To explain the meaning in a little more detail, there are the following 7 points. The essence of generating bodhicitta, the different types, the focus, the way of generating it, the ritual, the trainings, and the benefits. The essence of generating bodhicitta. The Ornament of Realization says generating bodhicitta means, for the sake of others, to wish for perfect and complete Buddhahood. See, we don't just wish for them to have a meal or a little bit of temporary happiness. We want them to have complete and perfect Buddhahood. No more suffering ever again, and total bliss and happiness forever. Thus, it means the wish to personally awaken to complete enlightenment in order to establish all sentient beings in the state of Buddhahood. This results from 4 principles, such as the strength of the cause, the strength of the helper, and so forth. The helper means to possess courageous strength, the superior intention solely by oneself to carry the great responsibility for the welfare of all sentient beings without exception. The essence is the desire to attain complete enlightenment that is able to liberate all beings. So we need to really have this tremendous courage. Kala Rinpoche was once asked what's the result of bodhicitta practice of Tonglen, and he said it was courage. Why? Because we're willing to even endure the suffering of samsara now. We're not even trying to get out so badly that we still have this self-fixation, right? We're really focusing on, now I'm going to liberate all sentient beings, even if I have to stay in samsara for innumerable kalpas. That intention and willingness, that courage, not only begins to benefit others, but it begins to benefit yourself. Because as long as you have a feeling that I am unwilling to endure pain and suffering, we're still self-fixated. We have all these loopholes. The ego keeps coming in the back door, right? We take on this Hinayana motivation. We step onto the path. We want to be free from samsara, but it's still mostly about our pain and our suffering. And as long as we have that, then we're still having a strong sense of I. And that's why even the arhats aren't attaining perfect and complete Buddhahood, right? Because they still have a subtle cognitive obscuration of I, who is free, and others who are not. So we need to eradicate all of that, and the skillful means of the Mahayana is to include all sentient beings in that wish, and even be willing to help them before we help ourselves. This is what's called the shepherd's attitude, right? Pushing the sheep through before you go through. This kind of level of bodhicitta is amazing, and the results of it are amazing, and it actually will help you to not keep getting hijacked, right? Because the path gets hijacked by this self-centered attitude. The different types. There are 4 different types of stages, from devoted engagement of ordinary people up through Buddhahood. Although 22 types are taught using analogies in terms of their characteristics, the following 2 divisions are easy to understand and more well known. The bodhicitta of aspiration, resembling the wish to travel, means desiring to attain Buddhahood. The bodhicitta of application, resembling actually traveling, means exerting yourself in the 2 kinds of bodhicitta, the methods for attaining Buddhahood. The Bodhicharya Avatara teaches us, in short, bodhicitta should be understood as being of 2 kinds, the attitude of aspiring toward enlightenment and the attitude of toward enlightenment itself, like understanding the difference between wishing to travel and actually traveling. The wise should likewise also understand the different grades of these 2. So, again, we have the aspiration to bodhicitta, the desire to attain enlightenment, and then we have the actual path towards enlightenment, which is walking the path of the 6 paramitas, which, according to the tradition of Patrul Rinpoche, has to do with generating bodhicitta, preserving bodhicitta, and then deepening bodhicitta. And that's what the way of the bodhisattva lays out. So according to the Bodhisattva Bhumi, generating bodhicitta is to focus on enlightenment and to focus on sentient beings. And so you'll notice this is a very deep and subtle obscuration. When we are practicing on the path, we can still be doing all these things and even wishing for the benefit of others, all with this strong self-sense. We need to diffuse this ice block self-sense into the ocean, right? So we need to think about all sentient beings. This wish and love needs to dissolve this focal point that we still have, this self-obsession we still have, so that it truly becomes non-referential. This is how we begin to really gain insight into no self. In that way, it is to focus on pursuing the wisdom of the greater vehicle and to focus on the 4 immeasurables. the way of generating bodhicitta. This is as the root text precisely teaches. To explain that, the identity of the four immeasurables is as follows. Love means wishing that all sentient beings may meet with new and unprecedented happiness and virtue. Compassion means wishing that they be free from the suffering they possess and henceforth bring its cause to cessation. Joy means filling one's mind with delight and rejoicing in all sentient beings' possession of such happiness. Impartiality means a special frame of mind which, guided by those three, remains at the same time unattached and free from aggression. Thus, their identity is to discard each of their adverse factors. So when we do this, we wish that other sentient beings have happiness. We wish they be free from suffering. We rejoice in the happiness that is being found, and we do this without any sense of grasping or attachment. What this does is it begins to bring us happiness, because there's always somebody enjoying a wedding or a meal or making progress on the path. And so when we feel depressed or frustrated, we can think about those beings, maybe in the monasteries in Nepal, and we can rejoice how wonderful that they're practicing the Dharma, that there's these beings whose whole life is dedicated to the Dharma, and they're making progress, and there's monastics, and there's yogis, and there's lay practitioners who are doing virtue all around the world, and even, people who are not formally on the path of Dharma, but are benefiting sentient beings. We can think about these benefits and we can take joy in them because we know that it will produce both temporary and ultimate happiness for these beings. The meaning of the word immeasurable is used because taking it as the focus, sentient beings who reach as far as space pervades and are not limited to a certain number or category. Sentient beings are beyond measure. They're not just the beings we can see. We have the perception and karmic vision that allows us to see humans and animals, and insects are also included in the animal realm. But there's also countless sentient beings that we cannot see. And their minds also are not limited, right? So this is what we need to get out of this fixation on self and other. So we need to have this love and compassion be totally pervasive without any fixation whatsoever. This is where we're starting to really move into insight into emptiness while also preserving this love. The Supreme Essence Sutra explains the different kinds. Love and the other three are not embraced by generating bodhicitta, are merely causes for happiness within samsaric existence, and are therefore called the four Brahma abodes. When embraced by the bodhicitta resolve, these four are the cause for nirvana, and therefore called the four immeasurables. So you can have just love, compassion, joy, and equanimity, and they can just lead to high levels of rebirth, right? Because they're not imbued with the intention of attaining full and perfect Buddhahood for oneself and others. This transforms them into immeasurable, right? This is what makes them lead to enlightenment instead of just being merit. So we need to really make sure that we're keeping our eye on the prize, that our aim is complete perfect Buddhahood, not temporary states of peace and happiness. So we need to make sure and bump up the four immeasurables from these four levels of just virtue to immeasurable. That's what makes them immeasurable, the wisdom. Generating bodhicitta has four conditions. The naturally present potential is the causal condition. This is to say that you have the ability to do this. The spiritual friend is the ruling condition, having a lama. And the cognizing the respective objects is the objective condition, perceiving sentient beings. Perceiving the benefits and disadvantages is the subsequent condition. This is having some insight into the karma and why all of this system, it works. It works because it's true. It's true because it works with how things actually are. This isn't a system of things that you are taking on that has no basis. It has a basis in reality. It has more basis than your ordinary self-fixated orientation does. See, we are misapprehending how things are, and that's why we have so much trouble. But when we perceive things more accurately, which the Mahayana vehicle does, then we start to move into a more harmonized state in which more happiness can be found. Let me check my notes here. Okay. They arise in the following way. The Bhumi sections and the ornament of sutras teach the four immeasurables arise based on sentient beings together with their individual focus, and that based on dharmata, these four arise without focus as the realization that their nature is unborn. The medium Prajnaparamita gives the order. A Bodhisattva Mahasattva should cultivate great love, great compassion, great joy, and great impartiality. The two segments agrees. As the first, cultivate love. Secondly, cultivate compassion. As the third, cultivate joy. And at the end of it all, impartiality. Thus the sutras and tantras teach harmoniously. The ritual. Various rituals originate from the traditions of the lineage of the profound view, the lineage of the vast conduct, and the special tradition of the Mantrayana. So we have the Bodhisattva vow. And it's very important to take the vow. We want to take it in the presence of a teacher, if possible, or at least in the presence of an object representing the three jewels. And we want to do this in a formal way. And then we also want to do it again and again and again and again. We can do more elaborate rituals like Patra Rinpoche's or the chapter from the Way of the Bodhisattva of taking hold of bodhicitta. Or we can say briefly, like you generally see the Bodhicitta verse at the beginning of its practice text. So we need all of these things until it is very deep in us. And if you're anything like me, you'll recognize that it is not very deep, that is still default to self-centeredness. So I have to really think intentionally about benefiting other sentient beings. The trainings. In general, all the teachings to be practiced are considered trainings in generating bodhicitta. But in particular, the trainings of bodhicitta of aspiration are not to abandon concern for sentient beings through keeping their benefit in mind. You see, this is a lojong. It means to literally think, I need to benefit sentient beings. It's a thought. We have to keep this thought, and we have to use this thought and orient our activities towards this thought. To gather the accumulations, which is to keep doing beneficial actions towards generating merit. Dharma practice is the best way to generate merit, but we also want to, make offerings to people who have less than us and help people out in physical ways when we can. But the most important way is to do our practice and make offerings to our teachers, these sorts of things. Cultivate the four immeasurables and to adopt the four white and avoid the four black deeds. That is, benefit others. And we can look back to the note here for the white and black deeds, and four black deeds are to deceive a venerable person, to cause someone to regret what is not regrettable, that is to regret doing something positive, to disparage a sublime person, and to deceive sentient beings. The four white deeds are the opposite of these. So this is what we really need to just basically do no harm, do what we can to help. The trainings in the Bodhicitta of application come in detail below. The way of training in the 6 paramitas and the 4 means of attraction, comprising the 3 kinds of training. The benefits. It's needless to mention the instance of not trying to attain Buddhahood, but bodhicitta is indispensable as soon as you pursue enlightenment. In the Buddha's words and treatises, both belonging to the greater vehicle, it is repeatedly said that the virtues of bodhicitta are immeasurable. In short, according to a sutra, were the merit of a bodhicitta to have a physical form, it would fill the entire realm of space and be greater even than that. See, once we have taken hold of bodhicitta, once we've truly oriented our mind stream towards benefiting others, then everything we do begins to produce merit. This is incredible. This is why this is so inconceivable. Because normally everything we do is self-centered. So everything we do has harm. Costs us merit, causes obscurations. But once we orient ourselves towards benefiting others, then everything we do, even mundane activities, even activities while we're asleep, begin to generate merit. When everything we do is towards attaining Buddhahood for self and others, then everything throughout the day, even taking care of this body, eating meals, going to the bathroom, going to work, everything we are doing is generating merit because we are orienting the whole picture of our lives towards this aim. So that's why this is so crucial, because in order to make progress on the path, we have to have this kind of merit. We can't have little intermittent acts of merit. That's not sufficient. We need this vast merit. So, Chapter 13, Conventional Bodhicitta of Application. Arousing the Bodhicitta of Application, this has 3 parts. Training in the 6 paramitas to ripen oneself. Training in the 4 means of attraction to ripen others. The way of mind training, condensing these practices to their essence. Training in the 6 paramitas to ripen oneself. With the attitude of personally pursuing true and complete enlightenment solely for the sake of establishing all other sentient beings pervading space in a state of Buddhahood, train in applying the 6 paramitas. A sutra teaches, Subahu, in order to attain true and complete enlightenment, a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should always and continuously train in these 6 paramitas. Thus it has been taught extensively in this and other scriptures. The first paramita is generosity. The Lamar Mission Ningpo root text says, with the intent of pursuing complete enlightenment solely for the sake of others, give away, like grass, your body and possessions, and give the relief of protection to those disturbed by dangers. Practice the Dharma yourself and establish others in it. That's really the essence of it right there. So you can see that the beginning of the whole path, how somebody even begins to encounter the Dharma is they've established themselves in sufficient merit through generosity, right? So generosity, because it is an act based on the recognition that this self-sense is not the most important thing, that we begin to spread the energy around. And that spreading of the energy begins to loosen up the suffering we've had around this self-sense, right? We begin to expand. Oh, I could include these others in my self-sense when I take care of them. So even, Garchen Rinpoche often talks about even like aggressive animals might take care of their own offspring. And so at least their love is willing to spread a little bit beyond themselves. And that's the beginning of the path. And then as we spread it beyond those that are very close to us towards all beings, then we really begin to enter the path properly. The essence of generosity, the first of the 6 paramitas, is to earnestly give away belongings with a completely unattached frame of mind. The motivation is to be intent upon pursuing complete enlightenment for the sake of others, as explained above. Also, whenever we hoard anything, whenever we are attached to things, this increases our self-sense, right? The more possessions we have and the more we're attached to those possessions, then we've increased the size of our feeling of self. Right? It's expanding. This is why all the great masters emphasize renunciation, that we need to let go of everything we possess, including even our own bodies. The objects to be given can be divided into 3. The generosity of giving material things, the bestowing of fearlessness, and the giving of Dharma teachings. For the first, while being free from the 4 impure and endowed with the 4 pure aspects of intention, material, recipient, and method, give away without stinginess, like giving grass, and with perfect thought and deed regarding the 4 types of objects, all your possessions, inner things, including your body, and outer things, the wealth and enjoyments belonging to yourself. So, the main text for all of this is the Way of the Bodhisattva, and I highly encourage you to study it and read it, and also read Patrul Rinpoche has his lineage. One of his students wrote a commentary based on Patrul Rinpoche's teachings called The Nectar of Manjushri's Speech. This is worth spending time on. Really get your mind wrapped around this. And many people get confused when they read the Way of the Bodhisattva, because all 6 paramitas aren't laid out in a clear way, because the Way of the Bodhisattva is actually oriented on a different paradigm. All 6 paramitas are, of course, included, but the way the book is laid out is that it is the generation of bodhicitta, the preservation of bodhicitta, and the increase of bodhicitta. And so the 6 paramitas correspond to this as we take hold of bodhicitta through the bodhisattva vow, and we begin to act with generosity, performing deeds for the benefit of others, whether physically, but especially through the Dharma, and we're doing this act again and again for the benefit of others. Then we are establishing bodhicitta in ourselves. And then we have the paramitas like patience, where we don't get angry and we put up with difficulty and frustration on the path. This keeps us from losing our bodhicitta. And then we have the meditative concentration and wisdom, which increase and deepen our bodhicitta, because it moves in from measurable to immeasurable, right? It becomes more and more infused with emptiness and wisdom. For the second, depending on your ability, give any appropriate means of protection to those disturbed by dangers of tyrants, carnivorous animals, enemies, bandits, thieves, fire, water, sickness, harmful influences, and so forth, thus relieve them of these fears. So we want to protect sentient beings from fear as much as we can, and many of us don't have the ability to do this very much. For me personally, having a vegan diet and not harming insects, these are ways for me to protect beings from fear. Right? So I'm thinking about the animals that are suffering in the slaughterhouses, and although I cannot control the whole world, and nor do I expect to, I can do my part to reduce the suffering caused by those beings, to protect them from fear, to protect them from harm. So, you find your own way of doing these things, but we want to orient our lives in a way where we are at least not causing harm to sentient beings, and if possible, to protect sentient beings from harm. For the third, in order to inspire faith in others and not to corrupt yourself, practice the sacred Dharma personally by discarding impure aspects and possessing the pure aspects of thought, word, and deed, and thus becoming worthy of being a spiritual friend. So we are working towards ultimately becoming a spiritual teacher ourselves, being able to give the Dharma and share the Dharma and continue the Dharma. This is an important part of the path. And recognizing that as a Buddhist, you are a representative of the Dharma, so your actions represent the Dharma, so we want to imbue all of our actions with positive qualities in harmony with the social situations we're in, so that we make people's minds happy, right? When we do things that are out of the ordinary, and although Buddhism doesn't have strict, like, these are right and these are wrong in the kind of eternalist approach to things, but it does have this recognition that we don't want to disturb other people's minds, because this is negative for the Dharma in general. We want to make the Dharma in harmony with society, so that it is people are interested in it, and the possibility that they might come to it is higher through our activity. So through being a good person and being, in harmony with social values, etc., then we not only make it easier for us to preserve a calm and stable mind, but also others might have interest in what we're doing. So these are magnetizing qualities. Thereby others will respect you, and the auspicious link between the vessel and the contents will be arranged. Thus establish those who long for the Dharma and teachings of the greater and lesser vehicles that are suitable to the recipient in which you have personally trained, while possessing the skillful methods for teaching the Dharma, and with a frame of mind that is free from the turbulence of material craving. So we share the Dharma all the time. Like, even if you're not a Dharma teacher, the things you say should align with the Dharma. But you don't need to speak in terms of Buddhist words. You just, as Garchen Rinpoche said, teach karma. So in whatever way people can hear, with incredible skillful means, right? No preaching, but find a way to communicate positively to other beings in a way that inspires them to act positively and abandon harm. This is what we want to do. So we want to be influential in this way, and teach the Dharma in whatever way possible, whether we're sharing with our friends, sharing in our sanghas, supporting others, or just teaching about being a good person. These are all acts of teaching the Dharma. So we want to do this as much as possible, and we do not want to combine that with the desire for material craving at all. This is what, we're not using this for material profit, setting ourselves up in this way. That is negative, and is a negative connection to the Dharma. So we want to just be like this all the time, trying to benefit beings in whatever way possible, materially, spiritually, just through a passing on of wisdom, sharing positive texts or books or movies, things that are beneficial. Whatever's beneficial, we want to increase that. And connect to that. And this is the generosity of sharing the Dharma, which is the supreme generosity, right? So it's not just sharing Buddhism directly. It's all things that are beneficial. Everything, the Dharma is love, as Garchen Rinpoche says, right? So the establishing bodhicitta comes through generosity. First, we loosen the self-grasping, and we practice giving so that the fist of ego begins to open. And the Buddha there's stories where he had extremely stingy people give a piece of fruit from one hand to another, right? So we need to train ourselves to be less and less tight-fisted around material possessions, around what I want and what I need and what my life is for, and and more relaxed and less emphasis on I need things to be exactly how I want in this life, right? Because it's just not how things work. And there's three kinds of giving things, giving protection from fear, and giving the Dharma. So do your best to do these in whatever ways are possible. And the greatest gift is what frees another from suffering at the root. So whatever you can do to help beings stop causing harm for themselves, right? Whatever you can do to reduce somebody's misunderstanding of karma so that they begin to produce their own happiness. Garchen Rinpoche said even a moment of genuine wishing happiness for another is already bodhicitta arising. So even the desire for somebody to be free from a headache has immeasurable merit, much less to have complete and perfect Buddhahood. So that we're working to really orient ourselves towards a generous state of mind on every level in whatever ways are possible, using our body, speech, and mind to benefit sentient beings. But of course we need to think, as Chogyam Trungpa said, we need to not have idiot compassion, right? So we want to give gifts that are beneficial, things that actually help. So this takes a kind of intelligence and wisdom, and we have to think about what is actually beneficial in this world. Encouraging and giving people more samsaric addiction is not wisdom and is not generous, right? We're causing harm then. So we have to be very skillful about what actually brings benefit. The next paramita is discipline. And discipline is the vessel that holds that generosity open. Without the water of bodhicitta spills and is lost. Carelessness, which is the opposite of discipline, right, is what allows for us to just wander according to our predilections. So discipline is what we use, the physical discipline of orienting our day around Dharma practice, around conduct, around vows that we have. We have the discipline of the speech with the things we allow ourselves to say or don't allow ourselves to say. And we have the discipline of the mind, what we allow ourselves to think and what we don't allow ourselves to think. And ultimately, if we can keep our mind disciplined to staying in its nature, then this is the highest discipline, right? So we have all these layers of discipline, and they are not external restraints. These are things you put on yourself to protect yourself and to protect others, right? Because when we allow carelessness to take hold, then we find ourselves in harm. We cause harm for ourselves and we cause harm for others. The Shantideva's vow chapter, we take the Bodhisattva commitment and dedicate ourselves as a protector for the unprotected, a guide for those who travel, a boat and a bridge for those who must cross over. These are our discipline. Our discipline is continually benefiting others and taking care of others, and doing this with a strong intention. And we also have ethics here, but ethics are not rigid black and white rules. It is the natural expression of somebody who's trying to protect oneself and others from harm. So when you don't know what to do, you ask, is this an act of love? Will this protect beings from harm? And will it protect myself from harm? So we want to be able to do this more and more and more. So the Lamar Mission Ningpo root text says, with the intention of renouncing a thoroughly delighted frame of mind, constrain yourself from committing the negative misdeeds of your three doors. Practice as much as you can the conditioned and unconditioned virtues, and motivate yourself to carry out all your deeds for the sake of sentient beings. The essence of discipline is to possess the four qualities comprised of taking and observing, to keep the intention of renouncing personal defects, and to have a frame of mind that is thoroughly delighted and interested in the trainings while retaining an attitude of seeking deliverance. So we need to be interested in virtue and helping ourselves and others, and we need to avoid causing harm, and we need to seek Buddhahood, right? So this is the discipline, right? We are keeping ourselves in that container. And these trainings can be divided into three. The discipline of exercising self-control, that is not just doing whatever we feel like based on our emotions, of cultivating virtuous qualities, becoming more and more generous and kind and helpful, speaking pleasantly, not harshly, being kind with our thoughts, words, and deeds, and of acting for the welfare of sentient beings. For the first, carefully observe the general 7 types of individual liberation and the specific trainings of Bodhisattva precepts that stem from the traditions of the 2 chariots, and henceforth to constrain yourself with committing the misdeeds of your 3 doors by interrupting negative conduct. For the second, practice as much as you can the conditioned virtues that are not embraced by discriminating knowledge and that are chiefly concerned with actions of body and speech, as well as unconditioned virtues that are embraced by discriminating knowledge and are chiefly connected with the samadhi of mind. All of this is to say that we don't cause harm with our body, speech, and mind, and we do as much positive deeds as we can with our body, speech, and mind. And that's why when we recite mantra, this is one of the most powerful ways. When we visualize ourselves as the deity and we recite the mantra and we keep our mind free from distraction, then body, speech, and mind are all engaged in these positive virtues. And that's why Garchen Rinpoche always spins a prayer wheel. This is an additional physical action that produces benefit. Right? So we're looking to do these things as much as possible. We're going to steer our ship slowly in this direction until our life is made of these activities. We're just doing these activities that benefit beings as much as possible. For the second, practice as much you can conditioned virtues, yes, that are embraced by discriminating knowledge and are chiefly concerned with actions of body and speech, as well as unconditioned virtues that are embraced by discriminating knowledge and are chiefly connected with the samadhi of mind. For the third, although the Bodhisattva Bhumi has taught 11 types, such as helping in meaningful actions and so forth, in short, motivate yourself with the superior intention to carry out all your deeds, whatever you do with your 3 doors, exclusively for the sake of other sentient beings, then actually engage as much as you can in activities that are of benefit to others. So I'm going to stop there. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate everyone who watches these and enjoys them, and I hope that it supports your Dharma practice. So over the next week, really try to think about generosity and discipline. What ways can you do more of this? You can do smoke offerings. You can do your offerings at your altar. You can make offerings to charity and to your teachers. You can even, share a little bit of food with some ants outside or something like this. These things are all of a benefit. And then discipline. Think about what's important to you in constraining your conduct of body, speech, and mind so that you don't cause harm and so that you bring more benefit. there's vast systems of codes of conduct and everything, but in the higher levels especially, we can use our wisdom mind. The Bodhisattva orientation allows us to not have just black and white rules, but the flexibility to see what is actually beneficial, and then using this in a very strong way to help others. So I hope you have found this helpful and meaningful. Let's dedicate the merit. By this merit may all attain omniscience, having defeated the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara may I free all being.